theorizing about technology tend to think about technology in one of two ways. 1. Technology as the solution, or 2. Technology as destruction. In Segal's book titled Technological Utopianism in American Culture, he describes technological utopia as the idea that through technology we will achieve a perfect society in the near future. By a perfect society, I believe Segal is referring to a post-human future where everything functions perfectly. The belief is not only that progress is going to happen, but that progress is precisely technological process. Utopians aren't oblivious to the problems technological advances might bring about, but instead they believe that more technology might solve problems that new technologies might introduce. On the other hand, technological dystopia is the idea that technologies will facilitate a social order that is relentlessly harsh, destructive, and miserable, like that movie I, Robot, for instance. This plays on the idea that technology is taking over and that it's dehumanizing us. George Orwell's book 1984, which was published in 1949, is a quintessential dystopian novel which explores a world where you're always being monitored by a totalitarian government. His book illustrates the extreme that society and technology could go to. Most art is built to last hundreds of years. Sculptures are cast in bronze, and paintings are oil on canvas. Street art, however, has a short lifespan, so it needs documenting. Therefore, street art exhibits are naturally non-digital second-hand experiences. This is why I decided to visit the National Gallery of Victoria too.
Your love is rated X. That means you're extra, extraordinary.
I hadn't actually thought of that. I think I've heard of Google Art Project, and maybe I think I read that the MoMA was releasing some online exhibitions, but I didn't know it was most art. I think it was just, I thought it was just selected exhibitions or small collections. Well, for me, going to museums or galleries is like a pastime, like a hobby. I stare at a screen all day, so the idea of looking at art on a screen doesn't really appeal to me. I also personally don't think art should be something that should be viewed online. I don't think anything really compares to getting up close and personal with the canvas or print or painting or photograph or whatever you're viewing, and having like a really close look at like individual brushstrokes and really getting a feel for the painting's emotions. And I feel like viewing art is a really sensory experience, and I feel museums themselves are such beautiful, grandiose structures, And I think just generally the atmosphere of a museum or gallery can't really be replaced by a computer screen. So, yeah.
Well, I knew that most art was available online by just using Google Images or something like that, but I didn't really know that you could see such high-quality art in greater detail and higher quality through, virtual tours and things like that. Well, I felt the need to come to the gallery because there's a certain aesthetic that you can't really get through viewing art in other means. It's hard to describe in words, actually, but it's something about just being in the gallery, the quiet shuffle of feet, and like the openness of the rooms. Something about just being in the building enhances the experience.
Well, surely it's mostly like in galleries and things. It's not everything is online. Like you can't, if you search for a lot of paintings, you can't find them. And
that's true because they're like copyrighted or owned and they won't be in good quality.
Yeah, so I think most of the time you have to go and see things in exhibitions. You can't see it properly, especially with like paintings and things where it is like very thickly built up and stuff. There's a lot
also like the scale.
Yeah, scale.
And light changes.
And texture and just like how it is in a room.
And if it's like a sculpture or one of
I do know that much of what is in museums can be seen digitally. It is an amazing resource, but it is just a resource to me. It is wonderful to be able to see the bottom of a Somali water vessel, for example, as I was doing when looking at a British museum site called Object Journeys earlier today. It is fascinating, but rather than make me feel like I have seen the piece, it inspires me to want to see it with my own eyes, firsthand, in person. What is missing from the digital experience is the perception of the way that clay both absorbs and reflects light, the subtlety of color, in light and in shadow, and any sense of scale, because all things become homogenized and are reduced or enlarged to fit the size of my screen. I miss the texture, the depth of color, the workmanship, and the feeling of being in presence with the work itself. I don't just see the works that move me, but I feel them, and that only happens in person. While shooting this footage and looking at people interacting with technology and art, I jotted down the following ideas which I thought were interesting. When people take pictures of art, it is destructive because they are disrupting their own first-hand experience, but at the same time they are actively creating content through their own virtual gallery. By taking pictures of art, people aren't getting the full effect. They are not experiencing one to create another. When taking pictures, people's judgment isn't always about the art. They aren't thinking about what the artist is trying to convey, or about what emotions the art brings about in them, but whether or not the art is worthy of being in their own virtual gallery. Individuals select certain art to portray themselves in a certain way. If everything were online and people no longer had an interest in visiting exhibitions in person, then art could be created, documented digitally, and then destroyed or stored in a big warehouse in the middle of nowhere. So, does technology complement, challenge, or hurt our appreciation of art? I believe it hurts it, and most people I interviewed do too. In German philosopher Martin Heidegger's book Being and Time, he talks about the nihilism of modern technological societies, that technology takes the meaning out of our lives. I feel like most people share this opinion when it comes to art and technology. They view visiting art exhibitions mostly as a leisure activity. If exhibitions were to only exist online in the future, I feel like a lot of people would feel dehumanized because of how impersonal that experience would be.
Your love is rated X. That means you're extra, extra.